Welcome to the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler. Have a question for the show or need assistance with your retirement plan? Give Philip a call today. 863-285-3815. 863-285-3815.
Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show. I am Jen Rezac, happy to be here with Philip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services in Sebring. Today we're going to have a little fun talking about what's going on with March Madness and some of those things that these teams that are plowing their way to the championship have to make it all the way to the championship game. Because, Philip, there are some lessons here for our retirement plans as well. But before we get into that, I hope you're doing great today. I don't know how your bracket looks at this point.
Bracket? What bracket? My bracket fell apart really early in this whole process. Really early.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, because you have some of those upsets like St. Peter's, my goodness, going all the way to the Elite Eight. I don't know how many brackets out there had that in place. But I'll tell you, Philip, I actually did not fill out a bracket this year. And I have to say, it's been a very relaxing and enjoyable tournament for me. I haven't had to worry about it.
How do you focus? How do you focus on a tournament if you don't have a bracket to say, oh, I'm cheering for this person or that person? Or, I did 3, but...
You did? Oh, my gosh.
They all crapped out early.
All busted. Well, the odds of filling out a perfect bracket, by the way, 1 in 9.2 quintillion. I'm not sure how many zeros are after that. That's probably not a number that we want Congress to even know about, though, Philip, because if they know quintillion exists, they'll spend it.
Sure. That's right.
That's right. So you're in good company if your bracket was busted by that first weekend of the tournament. And, Philip, like I said, we're just going to have some fun talking about this here. I have a list of some of the qualifications that I think some of these teams need in order to get to that one shining moment. There's always that one shining moment highlight reel at the end, which we'll see here at the end of the tournament. But Philip, to me, the teams that are still in it, the teams that have done well, they have talent, they have a game plan, they have endurance, and they have the right coach, and they got to watch out for the upsets. So those are some things that I think we can compare to retirement. And we don't want to be, it's fun to root for the underdog in the tournament. We don't want to go into retirement being the underdog, though, right?
Absolutely not. You do not want to be the underdog heading into retirement. There's enough things out there, like you said, that could play the upset that we don't need to start out the underdog.
Right, exactly. Well, let's talk about some of those upsets, actually, because, of course, the one that we talked about forever with this particular tournament, St. Peter's knocking out Kentucky and continuing all the way on to the Elite Eight, which was really wild, just something to see. So those upsets are fun to watch, and this is what makes it March Madness, right? those crazy upsets. But let's talk about some of the upsets for our retirement that we need to watch out for. I can think of a couple things, Philip, like, I don't know, a global pandemic or tax increases. There's all sorts of things.
We've had some things out there already in the last couple of years that have proven to be a little upsetting. The pandemic, who would ever thought that would have come along? And hopefully we never see another one as long as you and I are alive. But there's no guarantees, right? I mean, it could happen again.
Sure.
They could shut down the whole world, right? Because of this virus that's going crazy. But that's not the normal ones we think about. We think about some of the more common upsets that happen more on a regular basis. One of them is inflation, right? We've not seen inflation like we have seen it today, probably, since I was in college, right? That's how long. That's been a long time. That's over 40 years ago. Jen, and I don't know, you might not even been alive back then. Right?
I've been alive, but I certainly wasn't paying attention to inflation back then.
So that's a big deal, because that means if you have money sitting there doing nothing, right now you're losing about 7% a year just because it's doing nothing. So you got things like inflation. We have the possibility of tax increases. And I'm not going to say the possibility. I'm going to say the probability that it's pretty good.
Yeah, pretty certain.
We're going to see some tax increases. And that can take a big hunk out of your retirement strategy. And then the one that I think of probably more than anything is market volatility.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because it has, in my time in this industry of being a financial planner and strategist, is that I've seen two major bear markets that have influenced and impacted people's retirement. Back in 2000 to 2003. And then obviously a little bit closer to us was 2008. In both of those time periods, people had to put off retirement because of the market volatility and the major downturn we saw in that bear market. And the last one I'll kind of throw out there is one that we think about and keep in the back of our heads is long-term care. That can be a game changer if that pops up in your life.
Certainly some things that can upset the apple cart when you talk about our preparation and planning for retirement. And Philip, it's important that we talk about those things, because I want to go back to my analogy of talking today about the teams that are still grinding their way toward the championship. Philip, one of the things that all these teams have to even get to the tournament, talent. You got to have talent, but because of these upsets that we were just talking about, talent alone isn't going to do it. And I think that the analogy there for retirement is savings alone isn't going to do it. It's a real good start. You've got to have savings to get yourself into retirement, but savings alone isn't going to coast you all the way to the championship, to the end of your retirement.
You're right. It's not. And so that's where we've got to take that savings and we've got to put it to work, right? It can't just sit there because inflation will eat it up. And purchasing power dwindles, and you won't have enough to get you through to that finish line. And that's what we want to do. And so the other thing I look at is that strategies, right? We talk about game plans and having a game plan, and in basketball there's two halves or four quarters, depending upon your men or women's. In life, there's a lot of periods. Sure. Right. And there's phases, we need to have strategies for each of those periods. And that's where I think it comes into play is your coach able to help you in the current period of life you're in now? And there's a lot of coaches that are good helping you get out the gate. They're really good about helping you grow your portfolio. But when it comes to that distribution phase where you have to start taking money out because you're not working anymore, you're not adding to the pile, that takes a different strategy. And there's not many coaches out there that can develop that strategy and help you through that period of life's game.
Let's just talk real quickly, Philip, about the right coach then for helping you develop those strategies for whatever phase of life that you're in. Because this is where you come in, Philip, as being the one who can coach us through this phase of life. As you said, there are different periods or phases throughout our life. Different strategies come into play. And what you do is help people with that retirement-focused phase of life and the strategies that make the most sense for this time of life. So let's talk a little bit about that. Your role as that coach, and how do you help us develop that game plan or that strategy for this phase of life?
And that's a good question, Jen. And that's where we really and truly worked hard to develop that process, that strategy sessions, so that we know what that strategy needs to look like when we're heading into retirement. And we developed our core retirement design. And so what that allows us to do is really focus on where we need to be. Because heading into that phase of life, that period in retirement, the one thing we have to do is we need to understand and know, what is your risk preference? And I don't mean just one of those little simple forms you fill out, but I mean more dynamic, more scientific than that, to come up with what does your risk number look like? What is your number that we can then calculate and determine where we need to go from here? The second thing is we have to organize our goals and objectives and make sure that we've got things planned out. What do you want to accomplish in retirement? Because you don't want to sit there on the couch watching soap operas or watching game shows, right? That's not what retirement's about. It's about enjoying life. And if you don't have your bucket lists set up, what do you have to shoot for? And that's what we want to help our clients set up that set of bucket lists that they want to accomplish in retirement. Third, I think you have to look and review your current situation. What do you have in risk in your current portfolio? What does that look like for you? And then what are you paying in fees and expenses that a lot of times, Jen, you can't even see them. They're hidden somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And so we help people identify what those are and then be able to course correct or set up that right strategy. And then finally, one of the things we have to do is we have to establish that risk optimized portfolio so that it's optimized to your risk number, and then monitor it, make tweaks as we process through the years. And then ultimately we need an income plan in place to help make sure that we're going to get through that situation. And so that's a strategy that we use here at Statler Financial. And it's important that you realize that that strategy is not for the 25-year-old. It's not really for the 30-year-old. That strategy is for the guy that's 5-10 years out from retirement, heading into retirement, or is already retired. This is a strategy that we put into place to make sure that we don't outlive our money and make sure that we've got the income that we're going to need throughout our lifetime. You know, that longevity, endurance. Unfortunately, St. Peter's kind of ran out, right?
Yep.
They ran out of that endurance level. And so I think that we don't want to be St. Peter. We don't want to get in that final little minutes of the game and not be able to finish. And so we want to make sure we got the longevity taken care of as well, Jim.
So to get started on that, here's the phone number, 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815 to reach Philip Statler and the team at Statler Financial Services to get started on that core retirement design that's going to cover all the basic elements of your retirement. Think about things like your income strategy for retirement, your investments, what's going on with your taxes, healthcare, even all the way to the end, your estate and legacy planning. All that is part of that core retirement design, and the phone number to get started on that today, 863-285-3815. You can also visit statlerfinancial.com if you'd like to learn a little bit more. You're listening to the Statler Financial Radio Show. We'll be back in just a moment. Stay with us.
Call Philip Statler today to get started on your complimentary financial X-ray report. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
Are you near retirement and facing a layoff? You may have some important decisions to make regarding your 401k. If you don't work there, should your money stay? This decision could be critical to your retirement. Philip Statler and the team at Statler Financial Services have worked with many families with these types of decisions and understand your options. We can look at the options for your 401k that could save you on taxes down the road. Call Philip Statler and the team at Statler Financial Services and schedule your complimentary 401k review at 863-285-3815. Philip and the team are ready to assist you no matter how, by phone, video, or with an in-person visit. Call Philip Statler and the Statler Financial Services team today for your 401k review. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. Our firm offers insurance services and may not give tax advice. Advisory services offered through Statler Financial Services Incorporated, a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show. I am Jen Rezac, happy to be here alongside Philip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services. StatlerFinancial.com is where you can check him out online. He's also on social media if you just search for Statler Financial Services on Facebook. Always lots of great posts that he has available there. Going to be talking a little bit about inflation here in this part of the show. And Philip, remember when you were a kid and you'd buy a bag of chips and you'd open it up and chips all the way to the top of the bag, right? Or cereal or anything. It just seemed like the whole thing was full. Think about the last time you bought a bag of chips. And for me, it's tortilla chips. I know I don't need the cholesterol. I know I need to back off a little bit. It's my vice. But I open up the bag and air, like a third of the bag is air. is all I'm saying here. I am up to my elbow to get the first chip. And you're thinking, why so much air? What happened to all the chips? That's kind of like what inflation can do to your savings over your lifetime. You keep spending more money, but we're not getting more chips, Philip. We're getting more air for our money, right?
Yeah, we are. We're definitely getting more air.
Oh, man. So how can that impact our lifestyle when it comes to retirement?
Well, I think that, that means that it takes more chips to fill the bag now, right? So it's the same thing. As inflation creeps up, it takes more money to buy the same amount of stuff. And so we lose purchasing power, which is no fun, right? If you think back, and a good example of this, and the way to think about it is, think back to when you were a kid. What'd you pay for a piece of bubble gum? What'd you pay for a package of gum? And what does it cost today? What did that pop cost you? What did Coca-Cola cost you? And what does it cost today? That's the same thing. That's inflation, folks. Mm-hmm. That is inflation, pure and simple. And so think about you're retiring today, 30 years from now, what is that Coca-Cola going to cost you?
Right.
What's that hamburger going to cost you? That is inflation. And so it robs you of your purchasing power, and it takes more money to buy the same things is the simple way of putting it.
Right. And really, we're practically trained to not notice inflation much during our working years. That's why we want to make sure we talk about this, because you have raises, you have bonuses, and it counter affects what's going on then, right? So we don't always think a lot about inflation unless it's in our faces with a news headline or something. So how do we factor this in to our spending plans for retirement, Philip, when you're talking about going out to eat and food and candy and things like that? All of that's going to cost more in retirement. How do you factor that into your spending plan?
Well, we have to factor in an inflation factor, right? And so the question becomes, what do you use? What is inflation really going to be? I can't say I'm going to take out, $1,000 a month for the next 30 years and be okay, because it's not going to work. If I have the same expenses, at some point, I'm going to have to take out 1.5% more next year or 2% more next year. And the problem is that doesn't sound like a lot of money, because that first year it's not. But now the second year, if I add another 1.5% or 2%, another 1.5% or 2%, well, in 5 years,
it starts to add up.
That's 10% more than what I started at. And so it's being realistic about what our needs are and factoring in inflation. And that means that the income from the income plan that we put together has to continually be rising in order to help keep up with those inflations. We can't just mark time, take the same amount out, and it mean the same thing today as it will 30 years from now.
Okay, so let's talk about that when you talk about making sure that your income keeps rising somehow. Are there income sources that are inflation proof? Is there a way to make all of our income inflation proof?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's building the right plan. I mean, there are products out there. So there are annuities that have some income riders that you can get what they call increasing income, so that, when the market goes up, you're going to get a raise every year that it does. But it's an annuity. So does it work for everybody? No, because there's timing issues. There's liquidity issues. You might have to hold it for 7 or 10 years. The income rider, how does it work? Do we have to pay for it? So there's all kinds of things when we talk about annuities as to whether it's right for you. And a lot of times it's not the right fit for people. We have to make sure that we're using the right tool in the right place to accomplish the plan that we're trying to put together. So we look a lot of times at 5-year increments. So let's start now. 5 years from now, we'll take a big bump. 5 years from now, we'll take another big bump. And that helps us within our retirement income plan to help offset that inflationary periods. So folks, that's why I feel it's so important that we have a retirement income plan in place. It just gives you that peace of mind of knowing that I've got the income that will get me through retirement. And if you don't have one of those and you are 5 years out from retirement, or you've already retired, it's never too late. Give us a call and let's put one together for you. The number to call is 863-285-3815. Again, it's 863-285-3815. Give us a call. Let us put together a retirement income plan for you.
That number one more time is 863-285-3815. Historically, as we talk about inflation, the average inflation rate has been around 3%. As we were talking a few moments ago, it's easy to think that doesn't sound like much. It isn't much to fuss about, but you have to apply the years here. Even with low inflation, the cost of everything doubles every 20 years or so. And Philip, think about that. If you're retired for 40 years, everything's going to double twice. So that's a lot to think about. How do we get the right growth in here to address the possibility of inflation later on in retirement?
Well, first, let me say this, Jen, is that 3%, that number we've all forgotten, right? Mm-hmm. So because the last 10 years, we've been lulled into this low inflationary period of time. Right. Where inflation has been maybe 1.5%, 1.75%. And the Fed has been challenged to get it to 2%. They've struggled to do that. And so in our minds, we don't see that, but it's coming. Mm-hmm. It's been 10 years that we haven't had it, but folks, it's going to come roaring back. And that's the problem. People are not going to be ready for that.
Right.
So how do we plan for that? Well, the first thing I will tell you is that you cannot afford to avoid the stock market, which for a lot of folks is hard. I mean, I sit down with a lot of folks that are risk averse. They don't want any risk with their retirement money. They want all safe. And the problem is that it takes some risk to keep up with inflation. Now, it has to be calculated risk. It has to be the right kind of risk. It means that we need to look at tactical portfolios versus buy and hold portfolios. It means that we have to have an income plan structured so that we don't have to worry about pulling money out of the stock market all the time, especially when it's down. So there's a lot that goes into that answer, Jen. And the first thing that comes to mind is, one, we need to have stock market exposure. And two, we need to have a retirement income plan that maybe doesn't have stock market exposure. So we blend those two things together to provide the income that folks really need.
Bank of America surveyed global investment managers on economic concerns not too long ago. 93% said they think inflation could be ramping up, and I know we've seen some different indicators here. What are you thinking, Philip? What are some of the indicators that we could be seeing an increase in inflation over the next few years?
Well, I think that we are seeing stuff now that gives us reason for concern. Housing prices are escalating tremendously. Mm-hmm. Earlier we had corn prices at all-time highs. So we've seen a lot of commodity stuff, increase in cost, as well as other things, right? We're having issues with vehicles, mm-hmm, used car prices are going sky high because we can't get chips for the new cars, so there's all kinds of extraordinary items right now that are really playing into inflation. I believe we're going to see inflation, and it's not going to be pretty because of some of the concerns and the issues we're dealing with right now. Now, will it be what the Fed wants? Will it be that hyperinflation? I don't think so. I mean, it may be a temporary hyperinflation just because of supply and demand issues we're seeing right now. I think ultimately we'll get back to that normal inflationary period between 2% and 3%, but it's going to feel like it's higher than that just because of some of the supply and demand issues that we're seeing right now. But it doesn't mean that we're going to be fine. That it doesn't mean we're not going to lose purchasing power, because we are. We're already seeing that today. is that folks are losing purchasing power. They can't get out of the grocery store for, 50% more than what they used to get out of the grocery store for.
Right.
And so that just leads me to tell you that that's why it's so much more important today that we have that retirement income plan. It also makes it that much more important that we have that risk analysis because, like I said, inflation, to keep up with inflation, we need some risk in our portfolio. And a lot of people have too much risk. But there's a group of folks, probably 30 or 40% of the folks I sit down with, they don't have enough risk in their portfolio. And I understand why, Jim, because they're fearful, right? They're afraid of market downturns. And that's why we do a complete risk analysis for folks to find out what their risk score is. And then we make sure that the portfolio kind of matches up with that to give them that peace of mind that, hey, even though I'm going to have some ups and downs in the market, I know that the risk is within my risk number. If you don't know what your risk number is, and you don't know what the risk number is, your portfolio and how they tie together, you really need to give us a call and let's walk through our financial x-ray. To do that, it's simple. It's a phone call, folks. Give us a call at 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. Or you can go to my website at statlerfinancial.com, and there's a link to my calendar right there. You can schedule your own appointment. Do it right now. Don't put it off any longer. 863-285-3815.
Retirees suffer the most from higher inflation. Coming up next, we'll take a look in the past to help inform ourselves of what we can do to ensure our retirement can bear the brunt of inflation. Stay with us.
If you have a retirement plan and would like a second opinion, call Statler Financial Services today. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
From the pitch, swung at a little too soon.
Strike three, you're out.
To the joke told at the wrong time. To barely missing your connecting flight.
This is the final boarding call for Flight 109 to Chicago.
Timing is everything. The same is true for your Social Security benefits. Take them too soon and you could leave a lot of money on the table. Take them too late and you might spend down too much of your savings. Everybody's situation can be different, but taking your Social Security benefits at the right time is important for your retirement success. Philip Statler at Statler Financial understands Social Security and can help you make decisions that are best for you and your retirement dreams. Call 863-285-3815 to start optimizing your benefits. With Social Security, timing is everything, so don't delay. Call Philip Statler at Statler Financial today. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. Our firm offers insurance services and is not affiliated with the U.S. government. Advisory services offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida.
Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show. I am Jen Rezac, happy to be here alongside Philip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services in Sebring. StatlerFinancial.com is the website if you want to connect with him online. Again, that is StatlerFinancial.com to learn a little bit more. As we talk today about inflation, it's retirees who suffer the most from high inflation. Think back to the 70s. It was retirees living on a fixed income. Well, really everybody saw inflation rising to 20%, right? Which is just unbelievable. But it was retirees living on a fixed income who were becoming poorer and poorer as inflation increased. Philip, obviously, those times of higher inflation were not fun for anybody. But for those who've lived through it and said, okay, well, I've dealt with this high inflation before, talk about what's different for them now. Because if they're getting ready to retire now, they sure as heck weren't retiring back in the 70s when we saw that high inflation, right?
That's right. And high inflation affected the working folks too, right? I mean, our wages did not keep up with inflation, but the poor folks that are on fixed income, it was devastating to them because of all that. So, most folks don't remember what that hyperinflation was like, in the 70s and early 80s. So how do we do that? How do we keep up with that? Will we see that kind of inflation? I mean, I don't want to say we couldn't, because nobody knows.
Right.
But in some areas, I guess you could say we kind of already have in some areas of the economy, right? So what do? People need to be very concerned about how it's going to impact their retirement. Again, it becomes purchasing power. What's going to, let's break it down to the smallest thing. And that's, I'm going to go buy a loaf of bread. What's it going to cost me today versus what's it going to cost me in 10 years, right? So it's that whole purchasing power thing that is really concerning. And we don't want to not plan for that. I would rather plan for, higher inflation and not get it and have more money to spend than not plan for it and now get blindsided. And now I don't have enough money to buy the groceries and the things I need.
Right. Well, and as you indicated, how we might see this a little bit higher in different sectors. Inflation for medical costs, for example, that is one of those areas that we tend to see it trending a little bit higher. It was around 6% in 2020. That's the last time that we had those full numbers ready there. How do you help people prepare for the skyrocketing cost of healthcare in retirement if it is going to keep increasing at a faster rate than everything else?
Well, I think that it's no different than anything else, right? Just because that inflation is going up a little faster than other things, it just means we need to be more focused on making sure a couple things. One is, obviously, it all points back to having the right income plan in place, but there's other things I think people can do, Jen, and that's making sure that they review their Medicare supplements. Make sure that they're using the best possible, health insurance products that are going to reduce their overall cost. Don't look at something and say, okay, this is going to cost me more per month, but maybe it saves you over the long haul, right? Because it pays everything. You don't have to worry about anything else, versus something that, another plan that costs less, but now I have higher deductibles or I have higher copays. So I think it's making sure that we're looking at these things on a regular basis, not just one time and set it and forget it. I mean, then obviously the other part of that, Jen, is you got to have the income in place that's going to allow for those increases in our income to make sure that we can account for and live through those type of things. And that's why I think it's so important that folks have that income plan in place and they know how much risk they're taking in their portfolios, because those two things ultimately will decide whether or not you have enough money to live out the rest of your days. The risk part helps compensate for inflation. So if we have no risk in our portfolio, it's going to be hard to keep up with inflation. If we don't have an income plan in place, it's going to be hard to know whether we're going to have the right amount of income to get us through. All of that to say, you need to have a plan, and that plan needs to have a risk analysis. It needs to know what inflation is going to look like. We need to plan for inflation. We need to be conservative and not overly optimistic. If any of that resonates with you as to, well, that makes no sense to me, or how do I do that? Folks, that's what we're here for. Statler Financial, we're here to help you walk through that retirement lifestyle. Give us a call and let us help coach you through retirement. 863-285-3815. That number one more time, 863-285-3815.
Talking today with Philip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services. I'm Jen Rezac alongside. And Philip, of course, as we talk about inflation and costs increasing, I don't know anybody who says, gosh, I look forward to cutting back when I get to retirement, or gosh, I look forward to pinching pennies and no longer splurging on anything. Nobody thinks that way. We want the same lifestyle in retirement. So if we're worried about inflation, how much do we need to save so we can keep living the lifestyle that we're accustomed to and that we want in retirement?
So, Jen, I'm going to say that's probably the wrong question, right?
Okay.
It's how much am I going to spend in retirement?
All right.
What does my spending look like? What does my budget look like in retirement? And then if inflation is there, what is inflation? Well, maybe I need to use 2.5% to be safe. Now, there's going to be years where maybe it's 1%, but there's going to be years it's going to be 3 or 4. And so we need to build into our retirement income plan inflation. And if we do that, and we've got if we've got a realistic spending number, including, right, going cruising, taking the trip to see the grandkids, all that, if all that's wrapped into our spending numbers and we're legit with those numbers, and then we apply a 2.5% inflation number year over year over year over year, and we can make that income plan work for you, then we should be good, right? We should be okay. We should feel comfortable. Now, I will tell you that means that we've got to have some risk within that portfolio. Not too much risk, but enough risk to make sure that it helps keep up with inflation. To me, that's the equation, is putting those things together to make sure that you're going to have enough income, looking at Social Security, looking at your portfolio, and determining what is a realistic amount you can take out over your lifetime.
Of course, inflation is just one piece of the retirement puzzle as well. What are some of the other risks to your money in retirement that we have to talk about and that we have to think about?
Well, I think that we have to talk about taxes. That's, I think, is probably going to be bigger than what most people believe, especially if you're not in the bottom tax bracket heading into retirement. Then that could be a lot bigger number than what any of us are feeling right now. Medical is an issue. Having too much risk in your portfolio can be devastating. I've seen it rob people of income when we saw 2008 happen because they had too much risk in their portfolio. And so, that's why I say it's a balancing act when it comes to the stock market and the risk you take and what kind of portfolios you use, because we need some risk, but we don't need too much risk. And so we need to balance those things out based on your risk number. And I think that becomes more and more important the older we get in retirement. So the risks we have is taxes, healthcare costs going up, stock market risk. The last one, Jen, is longevity. Mm-hmm. How long are you going to live?
Right.
Have you planned to live to 100? Every plan I put together, I'm looking. People can say, well, I'm not healthy. I don't think I'm going to live that long. You may not be, but we don't know when that time is that we're not going to be here anymore. The biggest example I have is a client come see me about 8 years ago, and he said, Philip, income, I don't have to worry. If I'm here in 3 years, it's going to be a miracle. That was 8 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So we have to plan to live to 100, even if we don't. And I want to make sure that when I put together a retirement income plan, that it's going to do that. We're going to show that, hey, it'll last you to 100 and probably more if you're fortunate enough to live longer than that. But these are the things that are important. And these are the things that can be just as dangerous as inflation when it comes to your retirement planning for income. Listen, folks, if you don't have a retirement income plan in place, if you don't know how much you can afford to take out of your portfolio every year and it lasts you for the rest of your life, you need to come sit down with us and let's walk through our financial analysis and determine how much income you can realistically plan to take out of your portfolio. It's important. It gives you certainty. It gives you that level of knowing that I have enough income to last. Again, if you have at least $150,000, let us help you build a retirement income plan that will give you that peace of mind. Give us a call right now to schedule your financial x-ray. 863-285-3815. That's 285-3815.
This is the Statler Financial Radio Show. We'll be back in just a moment. Stay with us.
Are you near retirement and facing a layoff? You may have some important decisions to make regarding your 401k. If you don't work there, should your money stay? This decision could be critical to your retirement. Philip Statler and the team at Statler Financial Services have worked with many families with these types of decisions and understand your options. We can look at the options for your 401k that could save you on taxes down the road. Call Philip Statler and the team at Statler Financial Services and schedule your complimentary 401k review at 863-285-3815. Philip and the team are ready to assist you no matter how, by phone, video, or with an in-person visit. Call Philip Statler and the Statler Financial Services team today for your 401k review. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. Our firm offers insurance services and may not give tax advice. Advisory services offered through Statler Financial Services Incorporated, a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show. I am Jen Rezac, happy to be here with Philip Statler. He is president and CEO of Statler Financial Services. Philip is the inaugural Highlander Award winner for Financial Representative of the Year. Check him out online at statlerfinancial.com. And of course, you can also get on social media, get on Facebook, do a search for Statler Financial Services, and they will pop right up. And Philip, it's funny, you think about the world of finance, there are things that can have a positive impact on one set of people while negatively impacting somebody else at the same time. There's somebody benefiting from credit card debt, higher taxes, higher interest rates, and there's also somebody who's hurt by those things. So we're gonna go through some of these areas that are both good news and bad news, and how do we navigate them is what we're gonna do here in this last part of the show today. I want to start with an example from the lending world. And Philip, I thought this was an interesting headline that I found from Wall Street Journal. Credit card debt keeps falling. So that is good news for everybody except the lenders, except for the credit card companies.
They don't like that at all, do they?
They don't. You're right.
You're right. That's a great example is that type of thing is good news for for our population. Not so good for the banks and the credit card companies. And obviously, that's great news. People are paying down their debt, which is tremendous. I mean, it's one thing we've been looking for a long time in this economy of ours. And so we look at that, but the companies that issue those cards, they rely on more people using them, carrying higher and higher balances, because that's where their revenue comes from, right? The credit card fees, the interest rates. So this could indicate a coming long-term trend, if you will, with how people are thinking about debt, which is good news.
Yeah.
They're thinking about debt that way. However, it's bad news for those companies. Again, in 2020, credit card spending in the U.S. totaled some nearly $3.9 trillion on just general purpose and store cards, and that's down 9% from 2019 spending. Now you could say, well, is it the pandemic? Not necessarily, because I think more people shop from home, spend more money,
right.
On the pandemic. But I think a lot of them were smart with some of their stimulus money and use that money to pay down debt. The question is, will that continue?
Right.
In 2021 and 2022. If it does, Jen, I think that will be good news for us here in the United States.
Yeah, for sure. How do you talk to clients about addressing things like that high interest debt before retirement? Because with debt, again, there's a difference between a mortgage and credit card debt. How do you talk to people about addressing some of that while they're still working?
That's a good question, because I do get that question a lot. Kind of the opposite effect, right? Should I pay off my house? Mm-hmm. And I know that's not the high interest rate debt, because going into retirement, I tell everybody, look, you need to be debt free, except for maybe your mortgage.
Okay.
And if you're paying 3.25%, maybe 3.5% or less, I wouldn't be in a hurry to pay my mortgage off, because typically you're going to be able to make more money on your investments than 3.5%. Now, if you just got it sitting at the bank, not the case. But if you truly have it invested in some kind of retirement income plan or investment plan, you should be earning on average better than 3.5%. So it doesn't make sense to pay off the house. It does make a lot of sense to pay off anything else that has a higher interest rate than that 3.5%.
Okay.
It just makes total sense. And the more out of debt you are heading into retirement, the better off you're going to be, the more comfortable you're going to be in that retirement lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like it would be a good thing. It seems like it would be a really good thing. Here's another one. Low interest rates. We hear that referred to as a double-edged sword. It's good news for borrowers. If you are taking on that mortgage, if you are at a stage of life when you are borrowing money, you love low interest rates. It's bad news for savers, though, for people who are wanting to earn something off of that in retirement. Talk about how that works.
Well, you're right. I mean, so much. I mean, we're so thankful right now that mortgage rates are so low and interest rates seem to be very low, even on car loans. And even, credit card rates have gone down a little bit just because interest rates as a factor. But it is a double-edged sword because the poor folks that are thinking about retirement, they have their money in savings making zero.
Making nothing, right?
Virtually nothing. It is nothing when you take into consideration taxes and inflation, right?
Right.
So I spoke with somebody the other day, and they had a CD renewing, and they were antsy. Phil, we got to do something. We got to do something. It was a 5-year. We really did well the last 5 years. We were getting 3.25. But the renewal rate is for 5 years is I think it's going to be 0.5 or 0.75%. And that you can't get ahead if that's all you're making on your money at the bank. And so, it's good for those people that have to borrow money, but people that need to live off their interest rates, it hasn't been good for them it seems like forever, Jen. It's been a long time since we've seen decent interest rates.
Mm-hmm. So how do you help retirees navigate those lower interest rates in retirement? When you're at that phase of life where this is affecting you, how do you help people deal with this?
Well, I think that we look at a couple things. One is that most people, they have their money at the bank because they want something safe and secure. The issue is that most of those type people actually need a little bit of risk in their portfolios. And they just don't realize it, or they're so risk averse, they're not willing to take the chance. But it is, even somebody that's 90 years old, a lot of times we'll sit down with them and they'll have a little bit of money in the market, not a lot, but still they need a little bit of that exposure to help keep up with inflation. So you say, Phil, but what do you do to get safety? Well, there are things out there that will give you some principal protection and give you some decent earnings over the lifetime. And we use annuities for that. A lot of times index annuities will give us the ability to know that their principal is protected. They're not going to be affected by market risk, but yet they're going to get a better rate of return than what they're getting on their savings in the bank. So that's an area a tool. That's one of the tools we use. Is it the only tool? No, but it is a tool that will get us safety and a better return than what they see at the bank, Jen.
Here's another area that I want to talk about here. This is one that I noticed, especially in my former days as a reporter. Let's talk about taxes, because we hear a lot of times when those monthly reports come in about what state tax revenues were or what federal tax revenues were or whatever, it's presented in this light that it's good news that tax revenues came in at a higher level. And it is good news for the government entity that gets to spend it. But then when we look at the other side, that money came from taxpayers who don't get to spend that money themselves anymore. So that's the other side of this coin. We know that paying taxes are part of life, but talk about the impact that can have on our retirement savings.
Yeah, that money's coming from you and me and everybody else out here.
Right, exactly.
So it's and that's the issue, is that folks forget that their IRAs are taxable when they take it out. Their 401ks, they're going to pay tax on that when they take it out. They don't own it 100% free and clear. Mm-hmm. There's a mortgage on that tax deferred money. And the problem is we don't know how much the other party owns of our retirement account because it depends on what tax bracket you're in.
Wow. Yeah.
And as taxes go up, guess what? That percentage goes up. So if you're in a 22% tax bracket and you take money out of your 401k or your IRA, Uncle Sam's going to get at least 22% of it, maybe more, because it may push you into a higher tax bracket, or it may make your Social Security taxable. So it could be a higher number than that. People forget about taxes, and it's one of the areas that folks really need to realize that it plays a big role. And not like inflation. Inflation we call the silent killer, but taxes are forgotten and until it's too late a lot of times.
Mm-hmm. Philip, how do you help somebody create a plan where they don't outlive their money if they do end up living a long time?
It starts with finding out what they need in terms of monthly income. And we build that by taking what their budget is today. We apply some inflationary numbers. We don't know what inflation is going to be, but we have to plan for something, and we do. We put inflation numbers in there. It says, hey, look, we're having inflation. We need to build this out so that you get periodic raises in your income from now to age 100. And so we look at putting together those buckets and making sure that we are going to put together a plan that is conservative enough to get you through retirement the rest of your life, but objective enough to give you enough income to live off of. So folks, listen, when you look at your retirement, a written retirement income plan is key part of that planning process. If you don't have a written retirement income plan, and 90 to 95% of the folks out there don't, give us a call and let us help walk you through that process to determine what your retirement could look like given your account balances right now. Give us a call at 863-285-3815. Again, that number is 863-285-3815.
You've been listening to the Statler Financial Radio Show. Be sure to tune in again next week for more insights from Philip. I'm Jen Rezac. Glad you spent some time with us here today. We hope you have a great week.
Call Philip Statler today to get started on your complimentary financial X-ray report. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
Information provided during the Statler Financial Radio Show is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute investment, tax, or legal advice. Information has been obtained from sources that are deemed to be reliable, but their accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action. Annuity guarantees are based solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing company. Individuals should thoroughly review the contract for specific details of the product features and costs. Income payments and withdrawals from deferred annuities are generally taxable as ordinary income in the year they are taken. All investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. No strategy is guaranteed to be successful.
This radio show is a paid placement.